Hello and welcome to episode number 126 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am your host, Neelan, and with me as always are my co-hosts, Mark and Kellen. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen. Isn't that a funny joke?
What?
That's not what I was implying.
When somebody says to say hello, guys, and you say hello, guys, isn't that funny? I think that's comedy 101.
That's the high quality comedy
That's right.
you've signed up for here at Board Game Barrage. Kellen, this is the first and only time I'm ever going to call you a gentleman, so I'm still waiting for your response.
I mean, people do know me as being sort of the gentle one of us. So
You're the gentle giant of Board Game
yeah,
Barrage.
not a gentle man, but gentle.
Yep.
Said that very gently, too.
Today, on the Board Game Barrage podcast, we are going to be talking about something that happens extremely rarely, I would say, but every so often, there's a slight chance that we might just be wrong. How wrong would you say we sometimes are, Mark?
When we are wrong, I'd say we were so very wrong.
Yeah, that seems about right. So when that does happen, we are not above our mistakes. We're not too big, unlike some other podcasts, to admit when we're so very wrong about games. We're going to be looking back at some of the maybe bad opinions we've had on games, some sort of things that we've turned around on the way that we have spoken about games or thought about games and game-adjacent topics in the past.
So for this topic, I'll represent the listener as, you know, there aren't any things that I have ever made a mistake or was wrong about in relation to board games.
You're saying our listeners are perfect?
No, I'm saying will represent the listener because I have nothing to contribute.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll play Mark because that's my name.
Oh, I see. We're
You can be
taking...
Walker.
Yeah. I'll be Walker, you be
Yeah.
Mark, and Kellen will be the audience.
Fantastic. Oh, wait, no.
That's Neelan's line.
Dang it.
That's going to be coming up later on the show, but before we get there, let's talk about the games that we've been playing. Kellen, you're holding a rule book. What have you been playing?
Oh, he says he doesn't like to read rule books, and look at him now.
Don't tell him the secret, right? I got to have my reference material so I sound like I know what I'm doing. Tang Garden is a new board game from Thundergriff Games, and I'm actually holding the rulebook because Christina taught me the game. The Blue Tank taught me the game, so I don't remember all of the specific rules because she taught it so well. She's actually in the room. That sentence could have gone a different way. Tang Garden is the latest Kickstarter release from Thundergriff Games. It is a tile-laying game where you are building a Chinese garden in the Tang Dynasty era. And your turn is either lay a tile into the garden and make it more beautiful, or go delving through a deck of cards to kind of help you score for a thing, help you put a tree on the map, help you put a pagoda on the map, and score points at the end of the game for how many trees or how many pagodas you have. Everything is sort of broken out by those two actions, either add a tile to the garden or draw a card. I just want to start by saying this is the most overproduced board game I have ever laid eyes on, ever. It includes miniatures of the characters that have special scoring conditions. It includes miniatures / cardboard standees for the pagodas. So the top of the pagodas are built with plastic, and then there is cardboard connected to them as one piece. There are these huge landscape tiles. Each miniature is looking in a direction, gazing out into the vista of the Tang Garden, and they're giant pieces, and what they look at is like one icon that's in the either right or left corner of this.
I'm looking at it now on BGG.
Yes,
and
this
it's
is one of
crazy.
the prettiest games I have ever seen, but it's also so over the top that it's absurd, and it betrays so much of itself. Like, here's a great example, right? You put a character in a pagoda, and they're facing a direction, right? And they score for every lake they see. You know, every beautiful lake in the garden that they see, you know, will score 2 points. Except it also scores the tile that you're on, right? So that breaks a little bit of the vision because you don't just look ahead, you have to look down at what you're on. In addition, it scores all the lakes that you see that are covered by other things. So even if there's a bridge on top of it that makes it so you can't see the lake, even if there's a tree on top of it, and so even the pagoda that you're on, you have to physically move it to see the tile that's underneath it,
Right.
and then go, oh, that's what that is. But also, when you pick up that pagoda to look at it, the direction that the character's in facing matters. So if you accidentally jostle him or her and he's now facing a different direction, you've just screwed up the scoring for the entire game. So
Is that easy to do?
yes. Oh, definitely.
Okay.
They went so over the top with this lavish production of Tang Garden to make it beautiful and fun to look at and fun to look at on Instagram that it sacrifices literal usability. Right? You have these beautiful landscape tiles that they're looking at and like it's beautiful artwork, but then you can't see the iconography. And 3 or 4 of the icons all look the same. And you're sitting there squinting at them. And then there's also symbols on the tiles that you're also looking at that have the pagodas on top of them and the trees on top of them and the fish on top of them and the birds on top of them. It is absurd. Setting up this game and tearing down the game took almost as long as playing the game. I still haven't got it back in the box.
You've been trying since you played it.
It is feather light. This is light as hell. And hell is a very light place because of all the fire.
That's right. It all floats. The heat rises.
I am shocked by the production of this, by how many expansions they already have online. I know who this is for. This is for someone who wants a featherweight game that is beautiful, that looks like it cost $100.
Right.
But they've sacrificed usability in order to get you there. And even the things that are you're supposed to intuit that like, oh, she gazes out on the mountains and that's what scores points. But you can't even see all the mountains that you're gazing upon.
Right.
And there's a bunch of, the rulebook is not great. The iconography is not great. And they went so over the top in Kickstarter excess that you're just like, why did you do this? This game could cost $20 and I would be concerned that the gameplay is not good enough. That's how light it is. It also uses one of the easiest relief valves that I feel like designers use. It's once per use powers. It's like one time per game you can move one of your scoring, because a lot of your scoring comes from where these character miniatures are placed on the board. It's like once per game you can move one, or once per game, instead of playing the press your luck mini game, you can just choose the card that you want. Like once per game, just play 2 tiles instead of 1. And that always feels like a relief valve for design that doesn't live up to just tight, cohesive game design. It's like, well, we want people to feel like they have some modicum of control over this. It's also the case that the 2 actions are place a tile and draw cards, and drawing cards is very fun, and placing a tile is almost never fun. Christina got really, really mad at me because basically every time someone draws cards, it resets, and then you don't get as many cards until someone places tiles. And so she would place 1 tile on the board, and I would go, it's time for press your luck, baby. And then she would have to place a tile again, and I ended up with over half the deck in cards, and she was doing all the tile placement. I ended up eking out the win, and I don't know strategically what works because everything you do in this game scores you points. Yeah, that's Tang Garden. I have it. Do you either of you want it?
I have a quick question. I'm looking at a picture of this, and there are like cardboard walls around the edge of the board. These are gameplay relevant, I assume.
That's correct. So the direction that you are facing in, some of the characters care about seeing certain symbols on those giant boards. But most of the art doesn't matter at all, and the only art that matters is in the very corners of those, where you're deciding, is that a building or a double building icon? Right. Literally is a conversation that we had. It's kind of a funny idea because if you face north, all of the pieces that are to the north are in that line of sight. So your line of sight is square by square when you're going down the tiles, but then when you get to the end, suddenly you can see the entire vista.
I see.
Which kind of makes sense. Like if you think about it like a cone of vision, but not when you're right in front of it, which you can literally be. So at first I thought that sense of, oh, I'm placing this character and they're facing that way. Like this is intuitive. Like this helps with scoring. It's like, everything beautiful they can see. And it's like, well, no, except for everything underneath what they can't see and what you're standing on. Oh, and by the way, they can see everything to the north, even though you're literally 2 inches in front of stuff there. A huge, huge swing and a miss for me. I would not open this box again, except I have to put this rule book back.
Quick question. I'm noticing that it's a 2.5 on BG in terms of weight. You're saying, in your opinion, it's even lighter than that.
Yeah, I think that there is something interesting about, it's not like everyone has a set of these characters that have end-of-game scoring conditions. You actually have to choose to go for that,
right?
To put one of those on the board. And so I ended up winning the game, and I put less of those characters on the board than Christina. Mine just scored better than hers did. And those are available from a face-up array, so you can see what champions you can score. And so there is some forward planning that you could do. It's just the tile laying is so incremental. It's like, oh, this scores me 2 water points. This scores me 1 mountain point. That's not really that fun. And the fun comes from pressing your luck into this deck. And it does the classic things that you've seen in 100 games. It's like one of every tree gets you, exponential points. Or if you have the most pagodas, that scores you 12 points. If you have the second most, it's 6 points.
Right.
Or pairs of this. So it's everything that you've expected from these light games. It has a way high rating on Board Game Geek that is so buoyed by people who bought this on Kickstarter. Me and Mike DeLisio of the Dice Tower have been arguing about this privately. He loves it. It's his favorite game. That's definitely a fact. So write that down. I know it's a cop-out always to express, there is a market for this. That market is, do you want a light game that costs millions of dollars or looks like it costs $1 million of dollars? Yeah. You could just buy a fake Rolex, if you want to prove to people that you're fancy.
Play Biblios with a fake Rolex on.
Did you see the Biblios rolling right?
I did.
Did you see that artwork? What do you think of
what's wrong with it?
What did you think of that?
I mean, you're the one who's saying don't judge a book by its cover.
I've never said that. I always...
You're literally saying it right here. You're saying the game looks beautiful. It's garbage.
You know what Christina said to me?
What's that?
About books. Speaking of books, she told me that I wasn't a reader. And I said, I read all the time. And then she was like, Kellen, what was the last book that you... And then she paused, and then she said, finished. Because she knows that I still start the books, but I don't finish them. And so suddenly... I'm not a reader because I can't finish books. And I told her, stop gatekeeping. If I read the internet, I'm a reader. Or, in other news, Christina and I had pizza for dinner, right?
All right. Breaking news.
Classic American tradition.
That's right.
The pizza. And she was almost down to half a piece left. And we took a hug break, like we do,
Yeah.
Yeah. Neil and I do the same
We're
thing.
very familiar with the hug break.
Hug break. And she felt me reaching behind her. So I was like, oh, I'll eat her burnt crust that she doesn't care about. But she whirled around, broke the hug break, because she thought I was going for her pizza.
What you were doing?
She thought, no, the crust that she didn't want, the burnt crust.
Oh, I see.
Not the half full piece. She thought that I initiated the hug as a way to get to her pizza.
When in fact you'd initiated to get to the burnt extra piece.
No, I initiated because I'm a very loving person.
You're a
I'm
gentle guy.
And then got
Thank
distracted
you,
by
Mark.
the burnt crust.
Yeah, I saw it during the hug. I thought I could multitask.
That's right.
That's normal. People do that.
You wanted to have your hug and pizza crust too.
At the same time, she should have never known, but she whirled around. She's very perceptive.
You've got to make the hug tighter to prevent the whirl.
Oh, a tighter hug would have done?
Yeah.
I thought looser.
Why? What? No.
Because then she couldn't feel my body moving.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about your body moving.
Yeah, well, I don't understand, Mark. Have you ever hugged someone?
I'm a proponent of the extra tight hug. They call me the boa constrictor for that reason.
Wow. No one's going to top that. Boa constrictor. Tang Garden.
to finish off, Tang Garden. Yep.
Believe it or not, a review copy from Thundergriff Games. I am looking forward to a Wari Kickstarter of theirs that I have incoming. So hopefully that takes the sting off this Tang.
I have been playing Fortress. This is a fast-forward game by Friedman Friese. This was recommended, I think given to me by Kellen, if I'm not mistaken. I was quite keen to play this. I remember mentioning it as something I was excited to take home and play for the holidays. That didn't happen, unfortunately. But I got the chance to play through it. It's a 2-player game. The whole premise of the fast-forward series is that they teach you how to play while you're playing them. So it comes as a ordered deck of cards, and the first thing you do is you read card 1, and that will give you the basic rules. And then you might get, like, say, draw 12 cards. That makes your deck, and this is what you do with them. You keep playing until you hit another point in the deck. Then you're either going to get more cards into the system, more rules. The way Fortress works specifically is you have a bunch of cards that represent different, let's call them monsters or units of different strength, and then fortresses will come out into the middle of the table. At any point in time, you can capture one of those fortresses if no one else has currently captured it by playing a number of cards to that fortress. Now, the strength on these units sort of multiplies in an interesting way where you can only play units of the same number type, and however many you play, there's like an exponential bonus to the strength of that group of units. You would place those face down into the fortress, and then someone can later attack that fortress to capture it from you. So it's a sort of a little bit of a bluffing of where am I placing my strongest units, and then acquiring the cards sort of hand management style to overcome someone's defenses in order to claim the fortress from them. There is a unknown clock on the game that once 3 hourglass cards come out, which are shuffled into the deck, the game is immediately over. So it's kind of like a race of, okay, there's 2 hourglass cards out. Can I win enough fortresses before the third one comes out? I found it was definitely a fun system and a fun way to learn a game. I liked the idea, almost, quote unquote, legacy style of the game changing as you're playing it. You're getting new fortresses, you're getting new units, you get new special powers. There's this fun little moment where, because everything is just being revealed through drawing new cards, you'll pick up a card and you're like, oh, this doesn't look like a card I've ever seen before, but it's not telling me to read it out loud to anyone. So suddenly you just have this special power that no one at the table would know anything about. And that's cool. I love the idea of just you getting a little hit of something that's new and exciting that you can't wait just like unleash onto the game. And everyone's like, what does that even do? And suddenly the game is changed from that point. It's a cool concept. I think the most criminal thing it does is not all of the rules are super clear by the time that we got to them. Like, I had a couple of issues where we just weren't sure what the rule was trying to tell us, and there were just weird ambiguities to it, which is not what you want. You don't want to be pausing a game that's supposed to be quick to like read up a rule on BGG. And it could just be a translation issue, because it did seem like there were maybe some minor language things, or it could just be that they sort of tried to condense it to the simplest possible form and didn't quite cover in the nuance that it might have needed. But that said, I think by the time we got through understanding everything that was in the game, it was a fun little experience that I don't think either of us felt excited about by the end of it as a game, per se. Because even once we had unveiled the whole system, it didn't seem like something I would necessarily want to play again after that point. I think working through it once, I thoroughly enjoyed, and for a game that you can pick up for under $10 and play through in an hour and a half, 2 hours, I would recommend that, sure. But I don't know, a little bit lacking as a game at the end of the day.
So you didn't play this in person, right?
No.
So I don't know, and it's hard to describe because it is just a deck of cards, but there was always something at the end of a round where you added a few more cards and then you shuffled them.
Yeah.
And there was this literal thing in my mind where I was going, I'm shuffling in new stuff that no one's ever seen before, and I hope I get it, and Christina doesn't get it. Do you feel like there's anything lost in translation there? I know as a card game, maybe not, but that was just my first question.
I'm sure that any game gets somewhat dampened by just it not being in person, right? Because a moment like you're describing maybe translates as a small thing on my face that the other player can see. I just imagine picking up one of these cards and being I hope they don't realize that I'm reading this new card in a way that they might not know that it's something new and cool. Yeah, obviously some of that gets lost, but I don't know, in talking about it afterwards, I think we were both experiencing those moments of the excitement of finding a new thing. So I don't think it was entirely lost, but I would imagine a substantially better in person. But what board game isn't?
Ooh, good question. Through the Ages. Done. Moving on. And edited that mark so that it sounds like I had it.
Right
it just came off from my, what did Neelan say the other day? Off this balding of my forehead?
That's not a thing I would have said.
From the,
Wait, what did I say?
From the
top of the dome, maybe?
Oh, top of my dome, sure.
The top of my dome.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, right?
So I'm going to cut off 5 minutes and 23 seconds.
No,
Mark.
That's rude.
Okay, I've marked it. 5 minutes, 23 seconds while Kellen was thinking about it.
I think that Fortress works as a experience to play through more than, the game is going through the deck.
Totally.
And then you move on, and it sounds like you did it all in one go, which I probably would not recommend this summer.
Oh, interesting. That's funny because I was about to say that was actually almost the way I would recommend people do it.
Interesting.
Because I think there was something too, even as we were approaching 2/3 of the way through, we were still excited to see, and then maybe to some extent, maybe a little bit disappointed that the game doesn't change as drastically as you wanted to in the last third, I would say. I sort of kept waiting for the next big twist. which didn't really come after a point. But that said, like, this actually sold me on the fast forward concept. You know, we just did the math trade in the BGB Discord, and one of the games I was trying to pick up was Flee, just on the basis of being like, yeah, I would do another one of those, absolutely. But yeah, that is Fast Forward Fortress by Stronghold Games and Freedom and Freezer.
Mark,
thank you.
in my Neelan voice.
It's been...
Wait, here, let me hear the Neelan voice saying Mark.
No, I don't have one. I was going to do it, but I can't.
I would love to hear your best
No,
Neelan impression.
there isn't one. I'm not an impressions man.
What are you?
I am the funniest
Prop comedy?
king of comedy.
No, I said prop comedy. If you're not impressions guy.
What's my style of comedy? Intellectual.
Yep.
Highbrow.
One day I'm going to break up my American accent I've been practicing.
Oh, good.
Oh my god, I can't wait. Save that for the Patreon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'll be in the bonus episode.
Cash in on that.
Mark, what have you been playing?
I filled in a big blind spot for me in the board gaming world by finally getting around to playing Race for the Galaxy. This is Tom Lehman's classic tableau builder. It's got a hand management, simultaneous action selection component to it. So what you're doing in Race for the Galaxy, and for people who've played, obviously, Roll for the Galaxy, Jump Drive, which I guess is a reimplementation of Race for the Galaxy, or San Juan, which is a game that I had played and which is what got me excited to try it. Finally, I say excited, but I haven't played it in all these years. So people who play those games will be familiar.
Or New Frontiers.
Or
The
New
Race for
Frontiers.
the Galaxy
That's
board
right.
game.
That's right. Have you played New Frontiers?
Yeah.
Did we play together at Andreas's?
It's very forgettable when I play with you. Yeah, I did play it at Andreas's. So.
Yeah, but for some reason that game doesn't stand out. I don't know why. I remember enjoying myself. But anyway, sort of the charm of Race for the Galaxy is how much you're doing with the cards. It's multi-use cards, but not in a Chudiak innovation sort of way. You're using the cards both to build out your tableau and also to pay for them, which is, I remember San Juan was one of the first games that I played, and that whole mechanism of like paying for a card by using the other cards in your hand just sort of blew my mind. So anyway, what you're doing in Race for the Galaxy is you've got 5 different phases that you can do. There's a phase where you draw more cards. There's a phase where you build what's called a development, which is sort of like revs up your engine. You can build planets, which is the third action you can do. You can produce on those planets. So a lot of planets will produce a certain type of good. And then finally, you can sell those goods for either more cards, which again is the currency, or victory points. But the way that those 5 phases fire off is one of the unique points. All the players secretly select the phase that they want to fire off. And once everybody has selected the phase, they flip them, and then those phases will be the ones that happen in the game. So, for example, if Neelan, Kellen, and I play the game, and I use the draw cards phase, if I wanted to do the draw cards action, and Neelan wanted to do the build planets action, and say Kellen also wanted to do build planets action, the 2 phases that we would do in that round would be my phase, the draw cards, and then their phase, the build planets action. And we would all do those actions. So we would first all draw cards, and then we would next all build planets, even though in both cases not all of us played those cards, obviously. But the bonus that you get for being the one who actually activates the card, who actually plays that card, is that you get a little bonus, a little extra perk, I think it's called in the game. So when you're the one who plays the draw card action, you get to look at more cards and keep more cards. If you're the person who chooses to do the development action, like build something that develops your tableau, it costs you 1 less. So you're drawing cards, you have a hand of cards, and when you're building these developments or building these planets, they have a cost associated with them. And the way you pay for the cost is with the other cards in your hand. So if a planet costs 4 cards, I play the planet to my tableau, and then I have to spend another 4 cards from my hand to play it down. So it's a very tight economy, but it's interesting because you're sort of cycling through the deck quickly. So it's tight, but only in the sort of the decision in your hand, not in terms of the cards you'll see, because the cards kind of get cycled through pretty quickly. And you are doing this with an aim to build your engine to score points. You can score points in a number of ways. Some, when you're doing the sell action, you can sell your goods for either more cards, which again is the currency, or points. So that's a way to score points. A lot of the planets or the developments you bring out will score you points. A lot of the high cost developments are sort of end game scoring. So like the cards that cost the most are for giving you a lot of points at the end of the game. And the game only lasts until either all the victory points have been claimed or any one player has built 12 cards in their tableau. So the game goes really, really quick. Again, this was my first time playing, and even though I muddled through trying to figure out what I was going to do, we played 3 games of this back to back to back, and all 3 games, again, with one person who was a complete novice, took an hour. And the last game was much quicker than the first. And I can see just ripping through game after game of this. I absolutely loved it. The way we played is the board game arena implementation, which one of the big criticisms of Race for the Galaxy is the iconography. It's very heavy with iconography. It's also been known as a difficult game to teach because of the iconography and because of how sort of a little complicated things are and how intertwined everything is. I found learning the rules pretty easy, but I know that if I'd been playing this in person, even if I knew the rules, having to refer to the icons and what they exactly meant and what they meant in every situation would have resulted in a lot of referring to the rulebook. BGA, Board Game Arena, is great because when you hover over a card, you see all what the icons all mean. It's really simple. There are a couple of things in Board Game Arena that aren't super great. I know Mark and Mike mentioned this when they talked about playing Race for the Galaxy on Board Game Arena. There aren't really very much take-back action. So, for example, when you play a card down and you have to discard, say, 4 cards for it, once you click that 4th card, they're all gone. There's no, like, are you sure? So there was a couple times in our game where I accidentally discarded a card or clicked something that sort of hurt me. But I think the trade-off in terms of making the cards simpler to read is way, way, way worth it. It's just fantastic. As soon as we finished playing the 3 games, like, I was just raring to play more. A big thank you to Todd, who's a long time listener of ours, who is the guy who I played with and who was gracious enough to help me out when I needed pointers or clarifications on some of the rules. So, yeah, Race for the Galaxy, loved it. What do you guys think of Race for the Galaxy? I think you both played it.
Well, first, I think that I have an unread text message. You have an unread text message from me saying, let's play board games online, and you chose Todd, who might be a long time listener, but what am I to you but the man who you spent 125 episodes recording with?
I'll never put anybody in front of our listeners.
Except for Reiner Knizia.
That's right.
The only true and living doctor. I love Race for the Galaxy. I think Race for the Galaxy is one of the games in my collection that I have criminally underplayed the most. Every time I whip it back out after a few years, I end up going back to some of the starting hands, because they're hands that set you up in little different engines so that you don't get got by the game when you first start. Like, hey, these cards kind of work together. Use that starting hand. I think the idea of you have 5 cards in your hand and, one costs 1, one costs 2, one costs 4, and you're deciding, it's so painful to go, I want to build that one, I want to build that one, and I want to build that one. And then you're like, oh, yeah. Like, I can't do all of that. And so I've got to spend some of up. It's painful to spend it, but that simple action is just so good.
Yeah.
And I think Race for the Galaxy is what all other engine builders should be stacked up against. And, they most consistently fail. And they fail because they add hours and hours of gameplay that you don't need, or they complicate it. I think the only other thing to mention here is that this game was actually developed as and we've mentioned this before, but was developed to be a Puerto Rico, the card game, and then was deemed too complicated. So you can still see some of that scaffolding with sort of the 4 resources of 4 different colors that you're turning in. So there's little parts of it that definitely echo Puerto Rico if you're into that at all.
I have personally played a lot more Roll for the Galaxy than Race. I like Roll for the Galaxy a lot. I've mentioned that Race for the Galaxy is a game that I played once a long time ago in far from ideal circumstances and just bounced off really, really hard. And this is when I was pretty new to the hobby. And I actually haven't gone back to since. So I think knowing that it is on Board Game Arena and that implementation is good, aside from like the weird undo stuff, which is just one of those BGA quirks you have to get used to, I might check this out again on that, actually, because that seems like as ideal a way right now to get back into Race for the Galaxy.
Yeah, I would love to play it again. If you're up for it,
yeah,
100%
we should definitely do that. Yeah.
Just send him a text message.
Yeah, he'll definitely reply.
Yeah, I'm okay with Roll for the Galaxy. I'm not a huge fan of it. Like I said, I love San Juan, but Race for the Galaxy is clearly the best of the 3 for me.
And I think San Juan is like, I love San Juan. This used to be in my top favorite games of all time for sure.
Yeah.
San Juan is like, maybe I could con my mother into playing it, and Race for the Galaxy is not that. Race for the Galaxy is a game for us. And I think the iconography, too, once you get it, you get it.
Yes.
It's a little, some of the Windfall Planet stuff, whether it's this like glow behind the planet or whether it's a stroke around the planet, like changes it. Yeah. And so for a while, it takes something to get there. But once you get there, like it's easy.
Yes, I agree.
And it's actually much better than some iconography that I never learned.
Right.
Ever.
It always struck me as the sort of thing where the intent is that once you've got it, you can then look at a card and very quickly parse it, which is
right.
Which is great.
And that definitely happened to me in my 3rd game. Like, there was definitely a learning curve that I felt. myself climb as I played game to game to game.
Sure.
So yeah, that is Race for the Galaxy by Tom Lehman.
There's a wealth of expansions, too, that I've never delved into.
Yeah, and I've heard there's like a couple different branches of expansions. I know, again, Mark Bigney has his like favorite path of expansions. And I think all the expansions are available on BGA. So, once you play it a bunch of times, you can spice it up with some expansions. The Gathering Storm is one of the expansions. Did you know that, Kellen?
Well, that's a Wheel of Time novel as well. So
All right.
one came before the other.
Lehman had it first. I think the Wheel of Time story is actually based on the expansion.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right.
When they go to space in the fantasy novel.
So while I might have been wrong about Race for the Galaxy way back when, I'm not too big to admit it, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. But before we do that, I want to throw to Mark really quick for a little announcement.
Can I tell you something else you were wrong about, Neelan?
Yeah.
While we're talking about what Neelan was wrong about?
What's that?
You were saying that you got Fortress from Kellen, when in fact, I'm pretty sure you got it from me in a math trade.
I did have my copy here, but I didn't want to put you on the spot.
That's fine.
Because I'm a gentleman.
That's right. That's right. So the reason I bring up math trades, in addition to telling Neelan he was wrong about something, which I'm always happy to do, is to announce that we are doing a second math trade, what's called a leftovers math trade. Our first math trade just wrapped up, the first ever Board Game Barrage math trade 2020. Spectacular. Just wrapped up. We had a bunch of people do their first math trade. It seemed like a resounding success. A whole bunch of people all seemed to be super happy. I was stressing out about it a ton. We did it very beginner friendly, so I went over the results, and if anybody made like clear mistakes, I let them know and try to make sure that nobody got any trades that they were super unhappy with. And when we finally finalized the trades, I was just like on edge, waiting for somebody to say, "But I got this. I got 2 copies of this," or "I can't believe I traded this for this." And so far, nothing. And people seem to be having a great time. There's a great energy in our Discord with people discussing the math trade, discussing the games they got, helping each other out when it came to how to navigate through the Abecorn math trade system. So it went so well that
Mark,
we are going to...
Let me say it so you don't have to keep heaping praise on yourself. I think it was a resounding success. You did a great job. I think it was very well run, and I think that the role you took in making sure that everyone was doing a decent job of their matrices and like making sure that everyone was protecting their own interests in terms of not making bad trades, which is a thing that happens. I wouldn't say that, you did a bang-up job. It was fantastic. Even just like witnessing it from the sidelines as someone that sort of vaguely knew what they were doing but still managed to make a mistake, I appreciated that even.
All right, Kelly, now your turn.
How much did you pay him?
No, that's very kind of you. It's very, very kind of you. Honestly, whatever work I did, it was just so worth it because it was so fun and exciting to see everybody this morning when the results are finalized, just really excited and like talking about all the games they got. So we're going to run a really quick, I think about maybe a 2-week, I'm not sure how long we're going to do it, but it's going to be a much quicker affair this time. So I would really, if you are interested in all, if you don't mind paying the postage and you don't mind watching a video or maybe talking to some of the people on Discord to help navigate through the math trading system, or if you're a longtime math trader and you're looking for a math trade, this one was fantastic. Our math trade, which shocked me, rivaled the local Los Angeles convention math trades, which have grown and grown and grown over the years. And in our very first math trade, we basically hit their numbers right off the bat. So that was amazing. As a math trading guy, it was just so awesome. And so we're going to be running another math trade. So go to boardgamebarrage.com/trade to sign up for the trade, and go to our Discord, boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, and go to our math trade channel to talk to the folks about maybe their experience. If you're curious, you can ask them about their experiences with this last trade if you're trying to figure out whether or not it's for you, or ask them questions, or ask us questions. So yeah, Board Game Barrage Leftovers math trade is underway and will be running for about 2 weeks. And you join now.
Let's move into our feature topic, where we're going to be talking about things that we were so very wrong about in our board game opinions, board game takes, or just positions we held that we maybe don't anymore. Who wants to kick us off with the sort of thing that they might have been wrong about in the past?
I will say that I was so very wrong about thinking that all the games you like are bad. You see how I tied in both of them there? This is like Comedy 101. I'm just teaching here for free.
Yeah, I don't know who's listening.
The cost of a podcast is $0, and yet they've got 2 master classes on comedy already. It's amazing. I'll start because this is something that I've mentioned before. When I was getting into the board gaming hobby and trying to figure out which games I liked and which games I should be looking into, I dove deep into it and I, tried to do a bunch of research and look into a bunch of different games and look at the games in the past, look at the games, that were coming out. And then there were these things in the distance, these little niches that just seemed so weird and alien to me. There was 18XX was one of them, and then there's the war games niche, and all these like games that are sort of clear subgenres were things that just seemed so alien and so sort of insular and so intimidating that I never really even considered approaching them. And somebody I played a bunch of games with who lived close by, a friend of the show, Andreas, and I were playing games, and whenever he got a game or I got a game, we would talk about it and meet up and play it. And then I remember him talking about he was going to buy 1830 or something, and I remember like my apprehension. I'm like, are we going to like try to like betrain people? Like, is that something we're going to do? Because it just felt like so foreign. It felt like you couldn't really dip your toe into it. I remember saying like, if we do this, and it's just like the language I was using is ridiculous, but like, if we do this, we're going to have to like dive into it. We're going to have to go into it.
There's no coming back if we start.
That's right. Our lives are going to change if we try this. And, it was a good situation because, he didn't have any experience. I didn't have any experience. We had another friend who was interested in it, who had no experience in it. And so, we were all beginners and all like learning and sort of figuring things out together. And it just ended up being a fantastic experience, and it sort of unlocked this sort of bubble in the board gaming world that I thought was beyond my reach. Like, you dive into any sort of hobby, you dive into board games, and you like, at least for me, when I dive into a new hobby, I love the learning. I love the like exploration. I love like reading about like great games in the past and the different types of games and all that stuff. And when we pierced that veil of 18XX, it was like, wow, this is like a whole nother thing to dive into. There's like all these, 18XX games, and they all do slightly different things, but actually, you sort of know all of them if you know one of them because they all have the same structure, the same scaffolding. So it was just another cool like thing to get into. And before it was, whenever I saw 1862 or 18, whatever, for me, it was just like all shut down, all the same thing. What does it mean? It doesn't matter. But now when I see a new 18XX game on 18, like Mexico or 18, whatever, I'm intrigued. Like, what's the spin? Like, what's different about this? And so it was stepping into a niche subgenre that I thought was beyond me or sort of like going to be too difficult or too whatever for me to step into. And after playing that, Andres and I like tried the coin system, like the coin games, and that was like another thing. So just piercing the veil of that one subgenre sort of made me realize that all of them were sort of up for grabs. And, these are games that people play. It's not like these are like incredibly complicated things. It's not really like learning like nuclear physics or something. It's just, these are all games. And so you should try to step outside your comfort zone is what I learned. I mean, it was something that I was completely wrong about. I just did not think it was something that would benefit me or was for me. And it just really expanded my horizons. And it's something that I'm glad that I was able to try out.
Mark, I just want to make sure I understand what you were wrong about, right?
Yeah.
You were wrong, and you're actually smarter than you thought you were, and now you can play more complicated games. Is that what you just revealed to the audience?
That's funny. Yeah, if that's what it came off as, that's not at all. I was wrong in being closed-minded. I was thinking that this was
so big.
That's right. I didn't realize my own brain power. And then I looked at my Mensa card and I'm like, you know what? If I can do this, I can do anything.
See, I didn't even have to say Mensa.
You were leading me there.
I was not leading you anywhere.
You were leading me there.
You're throwing out the card everywhere we go.
Sure.
We're at Costco, and the person who's checking
I was
at
like,
the
let
door,
me find my Costco card.
why are you showing me this? You can't come in just because you're smarter than me.
No, it was just like looking outside my horizon. Actually one genre that I haven't really stepped into, and one of our friends, Marnie, has mentioned she's interested in trying one of these out, and I would love to, is war games. Hex and counter war games are something that I haven't really played too much of. I've got a couple that I'd like to try out, and so that's another. I can just imagine like stepping into that subgenre and all these war games that people have been playing for years. I mean, there was a time when the board game hobby was mostly, the hobbyists were playing war games. So I'm excited to learn about that whole subgenre of gaming. So yeah, that was completely a failing of mine.
A small one that I was so very wrong about is that my board game collection has quickly gotten out of hand in my apartment. And I have all these small box games, and I love having the little card games and all the different sizes. And one of the things I saw on Reddit and on Board Game Geek was these photo cases. So they're little plastic containers that have a bunch of little plastic containers inside them for 4x6 photographs. And these are beautiful, and you can store like 20 of these smaller plastic cases within a bigger case that goes on your Calyx shelf. And I'm like, this is brilliant. I'll buy 2 of these things. I'll put all my small games in it, and then I can have more games because you can put multiple games in one of these small boxes. So I set out like an idiot and filled all these up, put them in my Calyx, and I've not gotten them out since. So congratulations, Kellen. I was completely wrong that buying this apparatus would be better for my collection because now I don't see them and now I don't get them out. So, I mean, maybe I've succeeded a little bit if what I wanted to do was create an archive of games that I would never pull out again. I have taken it out of the shelf and said, this is not for me. This is not how I store games. But people seem to like it. I think I was very wrong, I suppose, for me, and your mileage may vary. I don't know if you've seen these things before.
Yeah, I think so. Was this similar to how Dice Tower West sort of had those small box games in little...
Yeah, I think it was exactly the same
Okay.
thing.
And so for you, was it like an out of sight, out of mind issue is the biggest thing?
Well, they just don't fit on the shelf in any good way. You've got like a stack of like 20 of them and they're just all falling over
Right.
or falling behind and then you don't see them. And also you can throw away the boxes
Right.
and then store more. Like for example, I have Tichu and Chimera in one box, in
Right.
one little photo case. I'm like, this is brilliant. Like, do I got 4-player? Do I got 3-player?
Got 'em
Either
both.
way, I'm set. I've got the Chimera for 3 players, obviously. And then for 4 players, the Tichu, which is not an animal I'm aware of in comparison to the Chimera, which I am more familiar with.
You're very familiar with. Yet you haven't played either one.
Yes, that's true.
My question was, is the main thing that you got wrong? Like
Yeah,
having
this is very specific, right? I guess I thought if I consolidate storage, that is going to be better for my board game collection, right? And I think you could expand that out across things. Like that did not help me consolidate my collection. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I consolidate my collection should be getting rid of more games is probably how I would say the net is, as opposed to saying, well, I could store more of them if I put them in this other shelving solution.
Right. Like finding excuses to have more games instead of solving the real problem of having too many games.
Yes. Right. Yeah, no, thank you, because at first this didn't sound like I was wrong enough, but now you've done it.
I did. I condensed
Showed him how he's wrong.
Turned it into gold. One of the things that I have on my list...
Off the dome of mine forehead.
Yes, off the top of my forehead. One of the things I have on my list is adjacent to what Mark was saying, and actually, initially I thought this is where he was going, was boring-looking Euro game. The stacks and stacks of brown boxes that my friend Dean had at his apartment when I would first getting into the hobby, and I would look at it and be like, that seems boring. That doesn't seem like a game I want to play. There's no way that this could be interesting. It doesn't have bright colors. It has a stern-looking man on the front cover in Renaissance-era clothing, and they kind of just all seemed like this...
You can't... Renaissance?
Sorry, Renaissance. That is...
No, but Mark, you can't be serious.
I'm with you on Renaissance, obviously, Kellen. Come on.
Renaissance?
Funny enough, that's actually not even a sarcasm. That's just a mispronunciation. I've been saying it long
I don't think
my
it's a
whole life.
mispronunciation. I think Webster would back you up, but we wouldn't.
Wait, no. Renaissance is something that everyone gives me flack for, even back home. Like it's
really?
just how I've always said it, and it's funny because it's one of those things that I just can't shake.
Please tell me you were a fixture at the local Renaissance fair.
Yeah.
And then the re would be pronounced Renaissance. What was your role at the Renaissance fair?
I don't know what it would be. I would be the wizard, obviously.
Yeah, I could see yourself with the wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kellen is the jester.
Excuse me?
One of my favorite things is the Kellen excuse me. The Kellen dead stop excuse me. I love it.
But yeah, like these games were kind of just always never that appealing to me until I sort of had to be forced. And a lot of it was honestly starting this podcast, talking to the two of you and having these games come up repeatedly. El Grande, Hunter Teutonica, and then just being told that I had to play these Kalis and told that, hey, these still hold up. Like they're not like bad old, obviously they're obviously not bad games, but they're not just like outdated old games. Despite the looks, despite the lack of flourish to the presentation, they're just really solid things that you have to play. And it took me a long time to sort of admit that, yeah, no, these are games that are still relevant, are still absolutely worth talking about, as we've now, sing the praises of games like El Grande and Hansa Sonic all the time. Like, I think I will definitely admit that I was wrong not to have played those sooner. And it's funny because what I've now realized, based on what you were saying, Mark, is that 18xx and coin games are still kind of in that box for me a little bit, as games that feel like just something that won't be appealing, but I know probably would if I were just to give them a chance.
Yeah, I think, you played City of the Big Shoulders, and I think you enjoyed it. And so I like that sort of introductory game to sort of even bolster your eagerness to get into it. But I agree with you completely about the drab games. And actually, the drab cover games and the drab component games were never really a big turnoff for me. Like, for me, the aesthetic side of the games isn't such a draw, so I don't really care if games are a little drab looking. But I did have the prejudice of new games must be better games, better designed games, because we've learned from the past. And, that's obviously not always the case. And I always understood there were classics, but I figured like they must have been improved upon. And in most cases they are, because I think game design has increased. But the game that did it for me, the game that like broke that for me, is Kalis. Mm-hmm. I remember playing Kalis for the first time and wrapping up, and I'm like, if this game was released tomorrow, I would have played it and loved it. Like, it was just the oldness of it that turned me off.
Funny enough, I think Kalis serves as a quintessential example for like both of you, because it's probably the ugliest cover. It's the cover.
Yeah, it's the cover that everybody thinks of when you think of dour guy on Board Game Box.
Right, and definitely like a very specific example for me of a game I saw on our friend Dean's shelf for years and years and years, and just never thought, hey, what's this game? Is it good? Should we play it?
One of the things that I have been wrong about in board gaming over the years is probably occurred mostly in like year 2 through 4 or 5 in the hobby, which is this, Dominion is cool and Carcassonne is cool. What isn't cool? Scrabble and, Quirkle and whatever your mom wants to play. I think I had this real strong aversion to like, if it's mass market, it must therefore be bad. And I have come around a lot in the intervening years. There are fantastic games that do reach that point of critical mass penetration and appeal, like Blocus, like Stratego, Rook, Scattergories. I would love to play Scattergories, and one of my favorite games is basically just a Scattergories ripoff with more arguing, which is what I would love to have. But I do remember a very distinct period of time where I'm like, I play Cosmic Encounter now. You think I'm going to play Pictionary with you fools on Friday night? Like, I'm a gentleman. Like, we're playing Cosmic Encounter, or I'm sitting in my room by myself.
Right.
And that served me well in college. I had a lot of friends. And so I think I've just come around on this concept that, and this is totally really try hard and a prototypical perhaps college thing. It's like, if it's popular, it can't be good.
Right.
And I think specifically in board gaming, and well, now you can find all the greatest games at Target and Target.com and Target Express. But in the past, Target, if it had a game there, I was like, well, it can't be good,
right? Because
Target has it. And I've come around, I would be happy to play a classic game of Scrabble with someone. I know the problems that Scrabble has, and I know blah, blah, blah. You're about to say it's basically an area control game. I get it. I get it.
Milan was mouthing the words, actually, as you said it.
I know, I preempted him. But there is a lot of good stuff in those games. Maybe not in the Phase 10s and the Unos of the world, but they exist.
Yeah.
And in many cases, they're 90% of the hobbyist version of the game. We're playing for that last little bit when I think we would have a riotous time sitting up together playing Pictionary for 5 hours.
I still feel like I'm a little guilty of this. Games like, maybe not the total mass market games, but the ones like Blocus and like even like Quirkle, I can't help but for some reason because they're not the most mass of the mass market, but even them being like in that mass market, I can't help but like feeling some sort of withdrawal in me from really embracing it. And yet whenever I play them, I have a great time. So it's still something I still struggle with to some degree.
Yeah, I think like Scattergories is actually the fantastic example of a game that probably should be in my top 50 if I was being honest. Like, it's a game I love and I will always be happy to play, and it tickles a lot of the things that I like about a lot of games. Like you mentioned Sixes as being like a game in the same ballpark, and why not count a game like that just because Boulder Dash is another fantastic example of a game that is fantastic and I would also never turn down.
Mark, you know what we do for you?
What's that?
Any game that comes to your gym, we actually put a Mensa Select sticker on it.
I was
without you
wondering why
noticing
all
it.
my games were. I was like, man, Mensa must have loosened their criteria.
So when you're at Target and you're like, this doesn't have Mensa Select, I can't buy this.
Yeah.
Like that's the reason that you like all your games at home.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. You got me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You're a gentleman, but you're a trickster too. Two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm saying.
I don't think anyone knows anymore. It's getting hot.
Yep.
You know? The things we do for our art.
Yeah. Boiling sauna-like rooms. So one of the ones that I'm still like sort of processing my feelings a lot, but every time I play one of these games, I sort of question why I like them as much as I used to. And these are games with a hidden traitor component. And I know, to be clear, I don't mean a game like The Resistance, not a social deduction game where you're working against an unknown team of quote-unquote evil players. But games like The Thing, Battlestar, Dead of Winter, I've found repeatedly, the more I played them recently, to be substantially less satisfying as when I was first in the hobby. And I think that is a thing that is very hard to balance by design, actually, because they're games that have to work cooperatively, balance-wise, but also allow for the possibility of someone to potentially be a traitor, and I just never think they get that right. I haven't played one of these, and I will admit straight up, for a game that I can point to, is maybe The Thing. I feel like Mark and I were very heavy on the Thing train early on, and I stand by those early games being incredibly solid, but the more I played it as it progressed, I just kind of felt it falling into the same traps that the genre does, which is a lot of the times games just don't work because either someone is either bad at being a traitor and like derails the game very quickly, or the balance is just completely thrown off by the dynamic of, well, this kind of has to work whether or not we have a traitor and whether or not they reveal themselves at any point in the game. And sometimes it just doesn't hold up. I think that those games, when they hit extremely well, but it's hard to recommend a game that is only going to hit a small percentage of the time. And I feel like that's probably just true of all of them.
Games that are like fragile.
Yeah. Those sort of extremely fragile traitor games. And it might be a genre that I'm less likely to pursue as much as I would have praised them in the past.
Does that include Archipelago?
You know what? I was debating including semi-co-op in this because I think semi-co-op has similar problems. I think Archipelago does enough that's unique and interesting that I still feel pretty compelled by it. But yeah, I think that could be a potential one for me to like turn the corner on at some point down the line.
So who was the most wrong?
We'll leave that to you to decide. Go to boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, go to podcast, and tell Kellen and Neelan why they were the most wrong.
Kellen, I thought this was your opportunity to admit you were wrong about PAX Premier Gate and never.
I know,
never
atone for
happened.
your sins.
I had it written down, but you cut me off. Okay. I will admit that I was wrong about the It's Good to Be a Kingmaker Rising Sun debate from 2.5 years ago, but I will not concede PAX Premier Gate.
Gonna have some convictions. I think that's gonna do it for this episode of the show. Thank you all so much for listening to So Very Wrong About Board Game Barrage. Just to reiterate, Math Trade, second round, Leftovers is happening in our Discord. That is at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Come join in, just hang out and talk to us. There's a lot of great board game discussion happening over in the Discord, and you could be a part of it. Otherwise, you can also find us on our social media. That is Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the good places you might expect us to be. We are there. We're also still looking for people to send in voicemails. We would still love to do a voicemail-centric episode. You can send your voicemail if you want to send us a message or a question. Try to keep it under a minute long at boardgamebarrage.com/voicemail. That is going to do it. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro music, What's on Your Mind, Kid? You can check out their album, Wake the Queens. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Done. So hopefully that takes the sting off this Tang sauce. Tangy? Tang is like it's a drink though.
Yeah,
Huh?
when's the last time you had Tang?
Wait, what's
Oh my god.
Oh, Neelan.
No,
God.
I'm being serious. I'm going to guess what Tang is. It's obviously tangy, so it's like lemony.
Close. It's close. Citrus family.
Well, yeah, he's in the right family. Don't give him the.
Is it orangey?
It is orange.
What other things are in the citrus family?
I
Neil?
mean, there's limes. There's a whole other things.
There's
there's
one other thing.
nectarines,
You think it's lime juice?
Tangerines.
What?
Wait, isn't there like a drink called like Broville? Is that a drink?
Bovril?
Bovril.
Bovril
What's
is not a drink.
What is Bovril?
Bovril is a meaty spread that you put on bread and toast.
way off.
Yeah, I mean it would be
drink.
quite a drink if you would dilute it down, I suppose, straight from the jar.
Like, I don't even feel like I know you sometimes, Neelan.
I know.
You know, we became friends on the PlayStation Network
Exactly.
recently, and then I got on his profile, and it said that his language was set to English, United Kingdom.
Oh
right,
my god.
English.
And I said, what does that even mean? Would they talk to you in an accent?
Yeah, it means that all the U's are in the correct places. And in the United Kingdom, we just call it English. We don't even need the United Kingdom.
We just call it English
Yeah.
too.
Well,
Yeah. It's the official language of America. You heard them?
yeah, I'm familiar. You guys should learn how to speak it sometime.
Yeah, well, we've got the outro all dialed in.
Right.
So whenever we want to talk about board games again.
I
Sorry.
have been playing, but I would
Yeah.
imagine a substantially better in person. But what board game isn't?
Ooh, good question. Through the Ages. Done. Moving on. And edited that mark so that it sounds like I had it. You know,
Right.
it just came off from my, what did Neelan say the other day? Off this.